Affliction Warlocks specialize in a ton of dots or damage over time spells, draining the life of their enemies. And I'm going to show you everything you need to know to succeed with them in TheWarWithin Season 1 at level 80. It's going to be very beginner friendly. I'm also going into a lot of depth so that if you are a veteran, you will also get everything you need from this video as well. Let's dive straight in with the stat priority then for TheWarWithin. Our primary stat is Intellect. We want to get a higher and higher eye level or item level in order to increase this. And generally the secondary stats don't matter as much as a lot of people think they do, unless you really are min-maxing and doing very high level content. The general priority is here, if you would like it. Looking at the secondary stats, versatility. This is going to increase any damage and healing done by you, while simultaneously reducing any damage that you take. Haste increases how quickly your spells actually do damage and how quickly your dots or damage over time will actually do damage to the enemy. Mastery is very interesting. As an Affliction Warlock, it's called Potent Afflictions. Increases the damage done by Malefic Rapture, Agony, Corruption, Phantom Singularity, Unstable Affliction, and Seed of Corruption by X amount. The number is going to be higher for the more mastery you have. They are a lot of our main spells in our rotation. If you don't know what they are, don't worry. I will be covering them in full in the rotation section of the video. Crit, of course, gives you a chance to do more damage. And again, I have put on screen the secondary stat priority. It's a very general idea. As I said, getting a higher and higher eye level is always the best play. You should really be only looking at which secondary stat is better if you're comparing two items of the same eye level. So, quickly looking at our set bonus as well for Season 1 of TheWarWithin, we have the Rites of the Hexflame Coven. Malefic Rapture damage is increased by 5%, and its critical strike chance is also increased. And the full set, Malefic Rapture, has a chance to increase damage dealt by your Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction by 15% for 8 seconds. And these are some of our dots or damage over time spells that are going to be empowered by our Malefic Rapture that we are getting on our set bonus here. And again, if you don't know what these mean, don't worry. I'm going to show you all the spells and how it's all going to come together shortly. Now moving on to some of the utilities and defensives that we actually have available to us as a Warlock. This left action bar up here is things that we're more doing to our enemy. And the ones on the right are more things we're doing to enhance combat or life for us and our allies. This isn't an absolutely extensive list, but it's the ones that I think you should be most aware of and that are going to be the most useful to you. So first up on the left here, we've got Fear. Strikes fear into the enemy, disorient them for 20 seconds, and damage has a chance to cancel that effect. So they're going to run in fear when we use fear. We then have a few curses that we can use, and depending on the talents, etc. you might have different ones. Curse of Tongues forces the target to speak in demonic tongues, increasing the casting time of all their spells by 30% for a minute. We've also got Exhaustion, reducing their movement speed by 50% for 12 seconds. And the Satyr increases the time between enemies' attacks by 20% and the casting time of all spells by 30% for 2 minutes. And these are different curses we can put on our enemy to hinder their combat prowess. Going over to the right-hand side, we have things that we can do to help our allies, including creating a soul well. Now, this is a kind of multi-purpose version. When you click this soul well, you're going to gain health stones. Your allies can click this to get health stones. And imagine it's like a healing potion, basically, they can use. You can also just create a health stone on its own. You can see here it restores 25% health. So Soul Well is one that you can click and your allies can get some before you go into combat, or the Health Stone just if you just want to make one for yourself. Dark Pact is another one that's really interesting. It's going to sacrifice 20% of your current health to shield you for 200% of that sacrificed health, plus an additional amount for 20 seconds. And you can use it if you are suffering from movement impairing effects. So if someone's tried to slow you down and then, slow you down, then beat you down, you can use Dark Pact while that is happening. So we're going to sacrifice 20% of health to then actually shield ourselves for a huge amount larger than that. We also have Demonic Gateway. This is amazing. So I can put one here. I can't use it here. I'm going to jump off this building. Okay, well, I can't show you, apparently, but basically it's going to create a demonic gateway between two locations, and you can teleport. So let's say you're trying to get around enemies, you're trying to cross a bridge, whatever you're doing, wherever it may be, just getting around, you know, the kind of arena that you're in. Demonic gateway is going to be really good for you and your allies to be able to do that. Unending Breath, probably not going to use this very much in combat, but I just thought I'd let you know about it. Allows an ally to breathe underwater and increases their swim speed. And this is a really interesting one, Soul Burn. It's going to consume a soul shard. So you can see here on my UI, there's these little purple icons. These are soul shards. And some of your spells are going to generate soul shards in your rotation, and then we can spend them. So what Soul Burn does is it consumes a soul shard, unlocking secret powers of your spells. So your demonic circle teleport, so you know, from your demonic gateway, it increases your movement speed by 50% and makes you immune to snares and roots, speeding that up. Demonic gateway can be cast instantly, so you don't have to do a 1.8 second cast on here. Drain life, gain an absorb shield equal to the amount of healing done for 30 seconds. The shield cannot exceed 30% of your maximum health. So we do have an ability called Drain Life. Here, draining life from your target, causing shadow damage and healing you for 500% of the damage done. Basically, you're then going to get an absorb shield if you use drain life after using Soul Burn. Health Funnel restores more health. Health Stone increases the healing of Health Stone by 30% and increases your maximum health for a short duration as well. So it basically just enhances a lot of your utility spells, and that is Soul Burn, and that is fantastic as well. Again, not an extensive list. You're not going to be using these spells all the time, but it's just really useful to know the kind of utilities and defensives that we do have available to us. And now let's look at how we're actually going to put the utilities into our rotation and use it all together to win in PvP. So first up, before the gates even open, let's create a soul well. Let's put our demonic gateway down and our demonic circle. Well, technically the second two are after the gate opens. Let's get our health stones out, put a demonic gateway far away so you can kind of teleport between to get out of any annoying situations. And then demonic circle, let's put that maybe behind a pillar, somewhere out of line of sight from the enemy, etc. So we can teleport there and kind of get away from them as well. Once we've really done that, let's use our Curse of Tongues, our Curse of Exhaustion as well, forcing the target to speak in demonic tongues, increasing the casting time of all spells. That can be good for healers, against healers that is. Curse of Exhaustion reduces the target's movement speed by 50% for 12 seconds. After that, we're going to put Corruption and Agony on all targets we can, corrupting the target, dealing damage every second, and Agony doing an increasing amount of damage. Agony damage sometimes generates a soul shard. We will then be spending these soul shards that we're generating shortly. We're also going to put Unstable Affliction on our main target. Afflicts one enemy with shadow damage over 21 seconds, and if it's dispelled, it will deal 1,000,000 damage to the dispeller and silence them. That will also generate a soul shard if the target dies while affected. So that's basically our opener. Go in, curse them, put your dots up, and put your Unstable Affliction, which is another dot, on the main enemy. Going into the more sort of bursty or general rotation, again, use your curses, then use your dots. Then we're going to put Haunt on them. A ghostly soul haunts a target, dealing damage and increasing damage dealt to the target. Then we're going to put Soul Rot on them, wither away all life force of your current target and nearby enemies as well, causing your primary target to suffer and the secondary target to suffer even more shadow damage. For the next 8 seconds, Drain Life will cause you to also drain life from an enemy affected by your Soul Rot. After we use that, we're going to use Phantom Singularity, placing that above a target which consumes the life of enemies within 15 yards. That's that purple thing you can see above their head there. Dealing damage over 15 seconds, healing you for some of the damage done as well. Once you've done that, then get your Dark Glare out. Summons a Dark Glare from the Twisting Nether. The Dark Glare will serve you for 20 seconds, blasting its target, increased by 25% for every damage over time effect. So if you have Corruption, Agony, and Unstable Affliction on there, and you also have your Haunt, etc. on there, imagine how much extra damage that is going to be doing. Just to clarify again, it will do more damage for every single dot or damage over time spell you have on your target. Hence why we're bringing that one out last. If we get a proc, perfect timing, from Nightfall, use your Shadow Bolt. As you can see there, it's going to be instant when you see those procs. It is called Nightfall, and it is here in your talents. Then to actually spend our soul shards, we're going to use Malefic Rapture. So we're going to basically get all of our dots, etc. up, use any free shadow bolts, and then spend our soul shards with Malefic Rapture. Your damaging periodic effects from your spells erupt on the targets, causing shadow flame damage per effect. And we're just going to spend all of our soul shards and really burst out that damage on them along with our dots. And that really is the kind of main rotation we're going to be following in PvP. We do have a few extra spells for utility. Unending Resolve, meaning you reduce all damage taken by 40%, and it also will actually give you full immunity to silences, interrupts, and pushbacks. Soul Burn will actually enhance, as you can see here, your demonic teleport, gateway, and things like that. Soul Rip, this is actually from the PvP talents, fracture the soul of up to 3 nearby players, reducing their damage done and healing received. And they actually will have their souls fractured around, and they will have to go and collect their souls to end the effect, which is really chaotic and annoying for them. Curse of Weakness increases the time between enemies' attacks. Fear, of course, fears them. And then lastly, we have Shadow Fury, which will stun them. And that's the main spells you'll be using. For the remaining PvP talents, I like to go for Never Ward, surrounding you with a shield that reflects all harmful spells. Can be fantastic against casters, especially if they go into their burst phase. And I also like Bonds of Fel. Encircle enemy players with Bonds of Fel. If an enemy affected leaves that radius, they explode, dealing damage to nearby allies as well. And then the third one I like to go for is Soul Rip, like I explained here. So for this build, we are going for Soul Harvester. TLDR, we're harvesting souls. We're Freddy Kruegering as the night goes on, which is pretty damn crazy if you ask me. Demonic Soul then. A demonic entity now inhabits your soul. Oh dear, it's not good, is it? It's not easy, is it? Allowing you to detect if a soul shard has a succulent soul and it's been generated. A succulent soul empowers your next Malefic Rupture, increasing its damage by 20% and unleashing your demonic soul to deal an additional amount of shadow damage. I actually love this already. This is insane. It's so much better than Hellcaller. No, they're actually both really great hero talents. Necrolite Teachings then. Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul damage is increased. Nightfall increases the damage of Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul by an additional amount. And by the way, these are all like mostly passives happening here. And they are all already worked into the rotation and set bonus that I've shown you in this video. So if you are a beginner or you're like, oh my gosh, another thing to think about, you don't really have to. I've done all the thinking for you, putting it into rotation. I'm just giving you background into why. So don't get overwhelmed by the new hero talents. Done through that one. This one's a utility defensive. Friends in Dark Places is what I like to go for. A Dark Pact now shields you for an additional amount of sacrificed health, which is actually massive. Wicked Reaping, damage dealt by your demonic soul is increased. Consuming Nightfall feeds the demonic entity within you, causing it to appear and deal more shadow damage. In the middle, we've got Unleashing Your Demonic Soul bestows a fiendish entity onto the soul of its targets. Remember, this unleashing of your soul is all going to happen passively through the demonic soul talent, keystone talent that we've got here. If this effect is reapplied, any remaining damage will be added to the new soul anathema. Then I like Feast of Foes. When you kill a target, you have a chance to generate a soul shard that was guaranteed to be succulent. You could go for Shared Fate if you have like a lot of enemies. When you kill a target, its tortured soul is flung into a nearby enemy, which inflicts shadow damage to them. Any enemies within 10 yards every second, which deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So if it's a big AoE situation, you couldn't go for Shared Fate. Otherwise, just go for Feast of Souls. Quietus, Soul Anathema, damage is increased and it's dealt faster, and Consuming Nightfall activates Shared Fate or Feast of Souls, for example, for the one above. Demonake's Fervor. God, I feel like I'm sort of citing some dark ritual reading these out. Your demonic soul deals 100% increased damage to targets that have your unstable affliction on them, which generally they all will anyway. Then we've got Gorfiend's Resolve. Targets resurrected with a soul stone resurrect with a lot more health and mana, which I think gives a lot more kind of, not defensives to you, but it's just a really good utility to have in your party for whoever you're soul stoning. Or maybe it is you you're soul stoning. Generally, it's going to be a healer, though. And then Satiel's Violation. Corruption deals damage faster and Haunt grants Nightfall. Woohoo, that's happening passively. And then Shadow of Death. Your Soul Rot spell is empowered by the demonic entity within you, causing it to grant 3 soul shards that each contain a succulent soul, which is, whoa, amazing, absolutely phenomenal, and we love it. I really love Soul Harvester. I feel like I'm saying this in too many videos now. I just love a lot of hero talents at this point. I mean, some I really hate, but some I really love, and this is the one I really, really do love. It's all happening passively. We don't really have to think about it. It's not adding like tons more complexity to the rotation. It's just making it even more cool, right? And that is the point of the hero talents to me. Now moving on to the consumables and also the enchants. So I'm starting off with the enchants here. So one thing you're going to notice is these Nerubian gem weavers. These are what you get in your vault every week to add sockets to your gear. And you can now add a socket to your head, wrist and waist. You'll also see there's magnificent jeweler's settings. Basically, this is for adding sockets to your gear as well. In Dragonflight, you could add or have up to 3 sockets on your neck. But now in TheWarWithin, you can have 2 on your neck, 2 on each ring as well for 6. 6 magnificent jeweler settings. And I really like this change. Now looking at the enchants we're having, on our cloak, it's the Chant of Winged Grace, which is avoidance and fall damage protection. Crystalline Radiance on the chest is primary stat. Armored Avoidance is avoidance. Spell Thread, this gives on the legs intellect and stamina. Scout's March gives movement speed. And then we're going to add Critical Strike on both of our rings. Stonebound Artistry, this gives you a chance for, I think it's Mastery. Oh my God, I've forgotten. Yes, it gives you Mastery. I've nearly learnt them all off by heart. You can also go for the Authority of Radiant Power, which will just give you a flat intellect buff as well. So up to you on those two. On the consumables, I would go for the Flask of Alchemical Chaos. Basically, this is actually quite an interesting one. It's going to give you a massive amount of secondary stat. I think it's like 7,000 or something, but it's going to take off 600 of your other 2 secondary stats, and this will rotate every 30 seconds. You could also just go for a Flask of Tempered Versatility for a little bit less DPS, but more kind of overall survivability. The Everything Stew is an option on the food, giving you a secondary stat, or you can just go for the Feast of Divine Day or Midnight Masquerade, pretty much giving you primary stat instead. Tempered Potion, this is going to give you secondary stats as well. Algari Healing Potion is obviously your healing potion. Mana Oil gives you crit and haste. And then Crystallized Augment Rune, which are going to be very expensive, but it will give you a small amount of primary stat as well. Then on the sockets, we're going to be using a Culminating Blasphemite. Basically, what this does is it gives you primary stat, and then it gives you 0.15% critical strike effect per color of other gem you have. So if you've got 1 ruby, 1 sapphire, 1 emerald, and 1 onyx, you're going to get 0.6% critical effect. Whereas if you've got all rubies, you're only going to get 0.15%. So you need to use different colored gems. Once you've got one of each 4, you can use like a Masterful Ruby on or Versatile Ruby. It doesn't really matter. You could use whatever you kind of want after that, depending on what secondary stats you're needing at that point. But I would probably sim your character at that point. Once you've got more than 4, depending on the gear you get, to see exactly what stat would actually benefit you the most. But TLDR, make sure you've got at least 1 of each colored gem on your gear so that your Culminating Blasphemite can get its full potential. Thank you so much for watching this guide. I hope it was really useful for you in TheWarWithin Season 1, whether it was for Mythic Plus or raiding. If you do have any questions, I'll be happy to help. My Patreon is in the description below, and that is where you can find my LVUI profiles, which I'll show you in a second. And also, I'm putting together a huge macro list for every single spec that's going to be really useful for you in TheWarWithin as well. I am doing all classes and specs for TheWarWithin, so if you are new to the channel, then please do click this playlist here to check out what else I have, which is all of them. There will also be PvP guides on this channel as well for TheWarWithin Season 1, so make sure to look out for that. This here is the UI that I was referring to. As you can see, we've got target frames, etc., left and right, and raid frames go in the middle here, and then weak auras in the middle with an action bar down here. Chat is behind where my camera is. Minimap and details, etc., are here on the right. All of the plater profiles, the voodoo, the LVY, etc., details profile has all been made by me. And again, you can get this on my Patreon should you like it.